Hey everybody, I'm Haley Gray. I'm the group founder of the Women's Entrepreneur Network, and I have my two dear friends here tonight, Velma Gallant and Victoria Bentley, and we're actually going to be playing a bit to Velma's strengths here tonight, because one of the things that she came to me a while ago and said, hey, I've got this really cool assessment, and she wanted to do it with me, and I'm like, okay. And it was really, really fascinating, the results, because one of the things I've wanted to understand about myself is, why do I do the things that I do? Why do I make the crazy decisions that I make? Why am I doing this? Where am I going, and why am I in this handbasket? And it's been interesting because I've done all the DISC training and all those types of things and all the DISC tests and all the, Myers-Briggs and a lot of other assessments over the years. And none of them quite answered the question in this way. Mm-hmm. And Victoria also did her assessment. Yes, so I'm going to
it was completely different from anything. It was a completely different approach to anything I've done before, coming at it from a completely different direction.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, exactly.
Seemingly extremely accurate. And I found the questions very peculiar, and I'm thinking, how on earth is she going to, I can't answer this one and I can't answer that one. Well, I'll pick the closest one. And I think they were intentionally obtuse and required decision making. And it wasn't like, well, go with your gut or go with the first impulse, or no, I had to work at figuring out what was what. And I thought, this will never be accurate. And it was fascinating. So
it was, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So Velma, tell us what this crazy thing you had us do is.
So it's called a Y operating system, and I prefer it being referred to as a discovery rather than an assessment, because in a lot of ways we're discovering some of the things we already knew about ourselves. So it's kind of like, it's a rediscovery of who we are. It's why we do things the way we do them. It's kind of like our motivation for getting things done. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those other assessments, and there's really amazing tools out there, they'll tell you how you do things. This tells you why you do them. So it is the basic motivation behind them. So it's why we do what we do, how we express our why, and what people can count on us for.
That is really cool. And I thought it was really interesting because you did my assessment, and it was fascinating. Because suddenly, once we share my results with you, Haley will make a little bit more sense to you. So do you want to tell them what my results were?
So it was so much fun, because of course with me being the coach that does this work, I get to see the results first. And as I'm going through them, I'm like, yep. And it was so fascinating to watch. So what Haley does, why she does what she does, is her why is to make sense of things. She can take a lot of information in and organize it and make sense of it. How she does that is by challenging the way things are thought about and done. So she's a real out-of-the-box thinker, and you've probably seen a lot of that inside of her group. If you're a member of her group, you would have seen that. If you're a client of hers, you would have been amazed at the unique ways she's been able to resolve things for you. And at the end of the day, what you can count on her for, shoot, what was that? I'm going to have to look because I don't remember.
You're going to have to look. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
What is contribute?
Pull them both up.
The contribute, right. And that's where I know for myself, that's one of the reasons why I end up connecting with Haley, is because I'm a contribute. That's my why. Mm-hmm. That's what I lead with. So when I see her making sense of things and being out of the box and everything like that, and always making a difference for people. You know, some of the stories I've heard about some of your clients where they've come with you with this situation that they've gone through, 4 people, and haven't been able to get it figured out. And they come to you, you make sense of it all, find the really unique solution, and it makes a huge difference for them. And they walk away feeling fantastic, and they walk away feeling served. And I'm a bit of an out of the box thinker. I went through my whole life asking why. Why does it have to be that way? So those 2 places, I super connected with Haley, and that's probably why I love hanging out in your group, is because you and I kind of vibe a lot the same.
Yeah. And, you know, it was that interesting thing of, you know, that challenging the status quo and simplifying things and making sense out of things. Which actually got me into a lot of trouble in corporate, because sometimes people thought that I didn't understand what I was talking about, because a lot of times I would take very complex jargon, very complex scenarios in the engineering world and make them out to be extremely simple. Just making sense out of things and challenging the way that people think of them as being incredibly difficult. And I'm like, well, it's not rocket science. Well, some of it is, but you know, it's not like.
But how amazing is it that you can take something that is complex, make sense of it, find an out of the box way that absolutely makes a difference for people. Like to be like that one client that I was referring to. I don't know who it was, but I remember seeing the story inside of your group. She'd been to, he or she, I don't know, had been to 4 people, and the website was a mess. You take a look at it, do your thing with it, make sense of the whole thing, make sense of a mess, find the right solution, and absolutely make a difference for this person. Like, to me, when we can find that for ourselves and find that acceptance of ourselves, like I've been running my whole life being an out of the box thinker, don't do things normally. So my why is to make a difference. Like, look, how I do that is by thinking differently and finding those out of the box solutions. And what you can count on for me are simple solutions. I take the complex and simplify it down. I did podcasts for 4 years where I would take authors' information, I'd read their book, we'd have an organic conversation about it. They'd say all of their teachings in a beautiful, amazing way, and I'd paraphrase it back in a short sentence, because that's the way I'm wired. And once I was able to see that about myself and accept that about myself, a lot of things started making sense. So jobs, you know, like you, the jobs where I could be my contribute, my challenging the way things are done and simplifying things. I love my job. I love the people I worked with. And then those jobs where I couldn't be any of that, I hated them. I couldn't wait to get out of that job. One of them I got paid to leave. It was fantastic.
Oh, that's always amazing.
Yes. And you know, and I love that you've looked back on your career and seen how your operating system made it a little bit challenging for you in that occupation, and how it actually makes a difference in the one that you're in now.
Yep. Well, it's interesting to me to take that, like, okay, so why do I do the things that I do the way that I do them, and try to dig in and really try to understand who I am as a person. Because I've had a lot of people that are like, oh, you just like to make things harder than they have to be. And then once I started understanding that operating system, that I have to make sense out of things, I have to understand why something is a particular way, and I have to challenge it several different ways, and, you know, then give back. And I'm like, oh, that makes
sense.
Suddenly, you know, the things I do, like building Women's Entrepreneur Network. And it's not that I'm not friends with people, but I haven't followed somebody else's blueprint to grow the Facebook group the way I did. A lot of people assume that I followed X, Y, or Z methodology. And I'm like, no, I created my own because I started growing it before anybody else was really doing it. So there was no known path to follow. So I just did it. I just figured it out, made sense out of it. And to me, it's just a computer algorithm, which y'all probably are going to look at me and go, you're weird, but.
Isn't that weird that it's an operating system?
Yeah.
It's our internal wiring and programming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So making sense out of what is social media doing? Oh, 25 years as a software engineer. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
So Victoria, what was yours?
Okay, Velma, pull me up.
I remember yours because, again, given that you two are friends, it was really interesting to look at your operating system and see why you guys vibe together so beautifully. Victoria's operating system is her why is to make sense of things. So she takes the complex and makes sense of it. How she does that is by challenging the way things are thought about or done. So she's another out of the box thinker. And what you can count on Victoria for are trusting relationships, and you can trust that the information she's made sense of and done all her work with is going to be trustworthy. It's going to make the difference because you can trust that it is what she says it is.
And there you go.
Oh, and it just rang very sincere. It's like, yeah, that's very much who I am, and that's how I think, and that's how I, like you said, challenge the status quo and say, well, why do we have to do it that way? Or let's look for the simple solutions, or taking difficult concepts and parsing it into palatable bites that people can understand and they can work with and run with, as opposed to needing somebody to decipher and somebody to translate.
Exactly. So when you look back on your life and your careers and your relationships, do you see how that showed up in it?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Especially the kid who challenged all the adults. Yeah. But I understand why I did it. And I have a lot of validation for doing it now. I get it. So that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I have been a challenging pain in the ass to my husband for the last 30 years.
Well, and the beauty of it is that, so for myself, with working with a lot of divorced women, myself looking back at my divorces, looking at those relationships through the lens of my operating system, I do see more why some of it didn't work out. And that was because I couldn't be me in those relationships. I'd chosen relationships where I couldn't be me. And that made a big difference. I mean, I would joke that, maybe my challenge is why I didn't work out with my husband. And it's true, but it wasn't because I was being a challenging person. It was because I couldn't be me as a person who likes to walk around problems, look at it from all sides, poke holes in it, grab that stick and poke at it.
Yeah. It makes sense.
I think it's a great tool because I think people often do things on autopilot, and when they're not working, they don't know why. But if you can understand your approach and your thinking, then perhaps you can heal yourself in saying, well, this is how I'm wired. How can I do this more effectively?
And how can
why gets you to the how and what?
With accepting myself, because I know when I look back on my life, and it was like 2.5 years was my max where I was happy at a job, because I'd already gone through and I'd already challenged things, I've already simplified things, and so by that time it's just become rote. and I'm bored out of my mind. And I would judge myself because I was raised in a time where you stayed with the company forever and ever, amen. And so here I am, I'm like, but I have to stay. That's what's supposed to happen. I have to stay. Why am I not happy anymore? Why do I hate being here anymore? And so once I knew that about myself, all of that started to make sense to me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That I really should have been just changing careers. I was a millennial before millennials were millennials.
Well, as my husband would say, there's nothing new under the sun, you know? And I think that sometimes now people are acknowledging who they are and what they need and giving honor to that. And I mean, these assessments weren't around 20, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, at the beginning of my career or, you know, mid-career for Victoria, you know, you didn't have this type of assessment. You had the, you know, Myers-Briggs, or you had these other things, but you didn't have that, okay, so why do you do the things you do? And to me, it's really interesting because then I can start to say, okay, this is how I'm wired, honor that.
Mm-hmm.
This is the strengths that go with that. And this is the weaknesses that go with that. And now what do I do to play up to the strengths and minimize the weaknesses? Oh, now it makes sense.
Well, and I know for me, when I had the understanding of my full operating system, so as a contribute person, somebody who likes to make a difference, that the way I put it, the dark side of that is a yes girl or a people pleaser, right? And so I would often say yes to things and regret it later, or I would overcommit to things and I'd burn myself out and get sick and that kind of thing. And so having my full operating system, it actually gave me my filter to be able to make better decisions. So whoever I'm have an opportunity to give to make a difference for, are they going to allow me to challenge the way things are thought about or done? If the answer is no, then I'm adding stress to them and me. Do they want the simple solutions? If the answer is no, then I'm adding stress to them and me. So in the end, what I learned was saying no was the contribution. So it gave me the way for me in my wiring to be able to say no and feel good about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's been, you know, for me, the dark side. For the contributing, you know, is that, yeah, I've at times said yes to way too many things, bitten off more than I can chew. I was a Girl Scout leader for 16 years to 4 troops at one time, for part of that time, you know, so definitely doing way more than maybe I ought to, and learning to say no, has been critical, you know, because there's a time where we do start to say, oh, okay, that's why I'm doing this. And, you know, and then if I look at the, you know, how I'm doing things, challenging the status quo, well, okay, so what about that is so interesting to me? And taking back and looking at making sense out of why am I doing that? And, you know, what's the positive of that and what's the negatives of that, and understanding, you know, where the pitfalls are. You know, sometimes trying to do it differently is not necessarily better.
And some of us have a need to challenge everything, right? And it's not always in our best interests. But if we know that about ourselves, then we can say, whoa. Another thing that's really important here is to realize that no is a complete sentence. No, I don't have to do 4 Girl Scout troops. It's not no because, it's just no. And you're free to say that when you understand why you do some of the things that you do. Or Velma was talking about 2 divorces. If you understand why you do some of the things you do, the next time you might ask questions of yourself. Why am I doing this? Why am I in this relationship? Or you look at the repetition compulsion you see in dysfunctional families, how people tend to marry the same sort of person over and over again. And you think, oh, gee, it didn't work out last time. But the inability to recognize that you're being maybe not true to yourself, or in worst case scenario, self-destructive. Or as a divorce lawyer, I would see woman after woman after woman marry another batterer or another junkie. And I think, gee, how, standing back from 40 yards, you think, how did you do that? But without the tool of asking why or knowing why, to understand why you're doing that, one of the things that gives you is forgiveness of yourself. The gentle approach to yourself that gives people the grace and the mercy to heal. You know where I'm going with that.
Absolutely.
And that's so helpful. So.
Well, and starting to recognize your strengths and weaknesses. Why am I doing this? Oh, this part's a strength. This part, not so much. And getting keenly aware of that. And
two sides of that same coin. Right?
Absolutely.
Because, making a difference, like, our world needs a lot of people out there making a difference, right? That is important. We need people out there making sense of things. We need all of these things. Another one of the whys is right way. And the beautiful side of that is consistent results, never taking shortcuts. If you have somebody who walks into the world and they do things the right way, they will never take shortcuts. One of my clients was a right way and an IT person. Always those consistent results, right? The dark side of that is my way or the highway.
The rigidity.
Exactly. Each one of our whys has something like that. Making sense, you can get into the weeds.
That goes back to mercy and grace, that when you can be kind to yourself and say, yeah, if I get a little too strident with this, if I don't look closely, I realize that it's, my way or the highway. And the flip side is, yes, but I'm the person that you can count on to have a really good work product because I dot every I and cross every T, or whatever exactly. The flip side of that is.
Yeah.
And to know that, I mean, how many people know that? So many people are on autopilot. I mean, especially busy women. You often just go on autopilot because you have so much to do. You don't think about it, or many people are afraid to look at it. They don't.
One of those reliable friends.
Often enabling friends, or tell you what you want to hear friends, or an agenda. Yeah.
So each of them has a real beauty to it. Like I know I did, of course, the discovery for my son. Got to do those things. And his why was to find a better way and share it. How he does that is by simplifying it. Got that from his mom. And at the end of the day, what you could count on from is that things would make sense. And when we looked at that information, we saw that, I mean, he's only 21 and he'd already been fired from a job for being that way. He's a musician. He's implemented a system for creating music based on his operating system. So he gets to walk into the world at 21, understanding more about himself than most of us. Like, I'm 55. And I'm coming to that understanding of myself. He gets to walk into that world with that. Like, I'm really excited about the foundation that kind of lays for him.
No, I think that there's real strength in knowing yourself and knowing yourself extremely well. And even
much time you can save,
Oh, absolutely.
Wasted careers, wasted relationships.
Choosing a partner. I was a pretty pain in the butt kind of person. I'm sure y'all would guess when dating, because I'm an engineer, y'all. And kind of a maverick, but definitely wanted to, know how many kids do you want to have? What's your educational goals? What are your income goals? What's your educational background? What's your family background? Tell me everything. And, if somebody didn't match, I was on to the next person.
Sounds smart to me.
Yep. Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Now you know why.
Yeah, when you're hardwired that way, it's kind of funny, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's great.
Being
Thank
able
you
to
for that tool, Velma.
make sense of things, and understand who you are. Y'all check out Velma, talk to her. She's amazing. I'm going to put her Facebook connection here in the meantime, so y'all can connect to Velma. It is just such a thing to really, get to know yourself better and understand why you're doing things. I've struggled with certain things in my life and in my business for a while. And, had people go, well, why do you make things unnecessarily hard? Well, now I have my answer. Why do things have to be so complicated?
And the reality is it's not unnecessarily hard. That is someone else's opinions, probably based on their operating system.
Well, but not only that, even if it is unnecessarily hard, now you understand why, and you can reverse engineer it. Like, gee, maybe I don't have to bang my head against the wall so much.
Right? Maybe I don't have to contribute in these ways.
Yeah, the end goal doesn't necessarily have to be acceptance. It can be, I'm going to always drag this leg behind me. Well, gee, maybe there's a new brace. Maybe there's a new shoe. But knowing what the hardwiring is, I now have ways of looking for it and doing right by myself in a non-judgmental way.
In my opinion, it when somebody says you're doing it the hard way, it's because they can't make sense of what you've already made sense of, and it is hard to them.
I think you're right. I think, yeah. So and judgment is easy, when you're backed into a corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Thank you guys so much. This has been helpful. If y'all like what you're hearing, give us a thumbs up, give us a reaction, and let Velma know that you appreciate this, and get in touch with her, because you're going to be seeing more of her.
Get in touch with her and do this, because it is just it's so freeing, and it's so helpful to say, well, gee, if I'm this way, then what are the ways I can best do A, B, and C, instead of trying to be something I'm not.
Exactly.
Really good.
Exactly. And if you do end up connecting to me through Facebook, say Haley sent me. Send me a little message that says Haley sent me.
Go find her and say Haley sent you. You got this. Cool. Y'all have an awesome night.
Yeah.
Y'all take care, and talk to Velma. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Bye, y'all.
Good night, ladies.